The shape that changed the face of warfare. What will we do with this, and why is it in here? I don't know. Parts of it are broken. I honestly believe that the difference between a gunsmith and an armorer is an armorer can put stuff together, but a gunsmith can make the parts. Let's get down a rabbit hole and find out why I'm smiling. This equipment is actually kind of unusual in that it was the best thing available at the time, and yet in hindsight we hated it. So we have here are two assembly bars, action bars, one of which has a complete assembly stud and one of which has a broken assembly stud. And what we're going to do today is make a replacement for the broken assembly stud and then be able to use this assembly stud in this equipment and put this one back in the other one that I'm working on. I have one of a piece of equipment like this in the shop that when I'm done, 40 to 45% of it is going to be handmade by me. So I was allowed to take another DNA complete system, examine it, look at it, mic it, spec it, and fix the one thing that was wrong with it, in that this particular piece, this is called an assembly stud, and the assembly stud will plug into the bolt right there. And this is how, when you put this whole thing back together again, the bolt is moved forward and backward, and yet when you take the action tube off the top of it, it separates. However, years and years and years of dry firing an open bolt long recoil weapon causes this whole thing to stop, and it put an enormous amount of force on this, and I'll drag all that out here and show it to you. So I've had the luxury of having two of these things, one that I was around to play around with the hindsight of 100 years of just knowledge of how to make this thing work, and be able to apply those lessons to something that I've got to make 45% of the parts for. This one, we're going to put it back together again and ship it back to its very happy owner. An example of a beautiful World War I piece of long recoil. Oh my God, this thing is dyslexic. It's like a jackhammer. I brought the broken part out now. The part threads down into this hole with a 9mm with a 1mm pitch. It's odd. I'm not going to argue the metric system again. We've already had that battle. It doesn't matter. I'm working in decimal because I work in decimal. So just humor me, we're going to ride by it. We're going to cut 9 by 1mm threads on this new part with a die that I've procured, because I can make my lathe do metric, but you can never disengage it. And rather than even attempt to explain that, I'm just going to cut it with the die. Now, why did this fail? Well, here's a drawing of the part, okay? It's got this stud part, the top part, that goes into the hole in the bolt. Right here. This top part plugs into that. The threaded part is threaded down into this, and then there's a little stem sticking out the bottom, and this stem is counterbored on the bottom side. So we bring the stem up through it, flare the end of it out, and make kind of a rivet out of it. So the reason why it's in three pieces was I didn't really know what this looked like on the inside. There's no drawing of it that I could find. So I had bored a hole down the center of it in an attempt to try to figure out what does this look like, and then it cracked, and I was able to pull the broken part of the threads out. And then I was able to push this stud part, I'm sorry, it goes like this, out the bottom, and you can see the slight flare here where it flares at the bottom of the hole to hold it in. So what we've got to do here briefly is we just have to turn a piece that's about 355 thousandths in diameter, which is around 9mm. Just humor me, it's close enough. Okay, this thing absolutely is busier than a three-pecker billy goat when it's running. We're going to cover that here in a quick second. I'm going to take you through how this system operates, and then we'll shove it out to the historians to tell you its significance in world events. But for right now, this machine needs to be repaired, and we are now about to cross that boundary between armorer and gunsmith. So here we go, to the lathe, Batman. Hey, I just said we're going to the lathe. There's one thing I want to show you real quick. This is a neat little gizmo that was made for me by Rick, our machinist. Rick has a little shop called the Artisan Shop where he makes one-off stuff like this. This die fits in this and allows you to just hang onto it and turn it. It's actually pretty nice. It's knurled. There is a side on this die that is far more open than the other side. So the trick is when we start this thing, you want it to start on the open side and come in. So we'll leave this down in here. And then when I go to mount this, these set screws will come in and twist it down. I just want to show you this really neat piece of kit. You'll see me using it. I wanted to tell you where it came from. Now we're going to go to the lathe. We're back up in the vise now, and I've threaded the part in that we made. The threads and the end of this, hang on a minute, let me get my carbon sheath plastic. Well, no, it's not plastic. Mine is a wood sheath carbon patent pointy device. Got it. You can see this is slightly proud, and now I'm going to take a hammer and set this down inside the vise. Are we centered up on that? I don't even need any heat. All I need to do is get me a big beater and a small ball here. So here we've got the small ball. See, and I'm aiming this with my left hand and providing the power with my right hand. All I got to do is get the end of this piece of tool steel to mushroom. You see the end of that is turning into a rivet. No lock. This is how you do this before Loctite, before industrial adhesives. This is just like when we did the 1919. Now that's a complete planish. I'm going to grab a file here, dress the top of this off. And just bring it in smooth. And it'll look exactly like the other one did. There you go. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on here. I found something out, and I don't claim to be any kind of an expert, but I have had the fortune, Yeah, Bruno's making little air quotations with his fingers. So reach up and make air quotes with me, shall you? And there you go. I've had the fortune of having lived with both of these things for a little while now, and I'm beginning to learn a few things about this system that in a dry laboratory or range environment, it's not that bad. But I'm going to tell you, out in the real world, it wouldn't last long. Let's look at a couple of things that I found. This is also a planished overhaul where they stuck the end through and then beat it down into a rivet and cut it off. So as you can see here, on this particular one, I noted something, and I don't know if we can see this. Is that cut visible? Is that cut visible right there? Let me get this out of the way. Oh, let's do that. There it is. How about that? Okay. This cut was made by me by removing this handle. This handle had the Terwilligers pounded out of it anyway. I got it that round. I made that cut because what I found was, and I've got, where's this mag? This is the one I opened up with. This mag has a damaged lip right here. As the rounds come up, the rear end of this round is actually tracking up in that groove. Here, I'm in center now. I don't have a monitor today, guys. We're flying, and I'm looking at Bruno. He's thumbing up, thumbing down, getting me in the middle here. So, hoorah for Bruno. So we're flying up inside this groove, and then when it hits this kick forward, the round pushes forward, right? And it makes sure that this rim is in front of the one behind it. They guide it. Great. However, under recoil, when this bolt, that barrel, and everything winds up going forward, if this magazine is full, it has a lot of inertia. So the weapon will come forward and the magazine will stay put and the entire weapon will come in. And what I found was, where'd that unmodified one go? Ah, that's the one in the vise. So we'll use the modified one. This piece of the bolt handle, there's the dent right there. Let me get this out of the way so you can actually see it. Right there. That the magazine is staying put in the entire gun, not the bolt handle, but the entire system is running into it. So what I did was I cut that notch on a piece of equipment that I'm going to make 40 to 45% of the parts for. This stock, out of the box, rather nice one is going home with its. But this modification needed to be made, and I made it. There's another modification while we're standing here that needs to be made, and I gotta go find this little bugger. Here it is. Let's pull this off, because all we have to do now is cut this and dress it, and this is done. So that's done. So the gunsmithing part of exercise is complete. Okay, this is the heat shield that they talk, not heat shield, heat dissipation. It's made out of aluminum, and it has ribs in an attempt to increase its surface area. The problem you've got with this thing is that the OD of this is maybe 15 thousandths of an inch smaller than the ID of the barrel sleeve. And we're going to talk about this in a minute because we got to reset camera-wise to be able to see this. So aluminum has a rather high thermal coefficient of expansion. And back when this stuff was being used, 19, 10, 12, 14, aluminum was some new space-age stuff back then. So they didn't realize that it was going to grow as much, and what will happen is this thing will actually expand enough to start dragging on the inside of this barrel shield. And at that point, and it happens at about 60, 80, this gun is getting ready to go somewhere where we're going to run it until it stops. And it's going to, I'll tell you from personal experience, it's going to stop at about 60 rounds because it's just going to be too hot. They did not know. We're going to do a camera reset, and I'm going to show you something on this system that you won't get to see elsewhere. I'm going to show you where all the drag is on this peg and why they tie up from heat. So I showed you what damages the mags. I think I stepped on what damages the mags, but I want to show you how the heat kills this thing, and that's why they go down. The mud, yeah, okay, the mud. I'll spot you the mud. Let's get into the heart of this thing real quick because I'm going to show you some stuff that really can't be demonstrated anywhere else. This is the barrel. The barrel has if you really look at this thing, there is an awful lot of steam engine practice in this. They've been really building steam engines for real about 100 years by the time this weapon was designed. But let's look at some spots here that wear. There's a high spot in the back. There's a high spot here. And then there's a high spot all the way out here at the nose. And that's actually a gas piston, and I'm going to show you that here in a minute. This heat shield screws over this and goes in here. I keep calling it a heat shield, guys. I'm fully well aware of the fact that it's a radiator. My bust. There's a piece that's supposed to be here that I didn't put on because I didn't see it when I did it. That's why. Ah, here it is. Hang on. One more part. Just in the interest of accuracy, let's look at this. So you pull this piece off, the barrel screws out, and you're left with a breech sleeve, a barrel ender gizmo. This guy goes in there. That heatsink goes on there. And this screws on here. Boom. All of that plus the bolt, which sits up inside here. The bolt runs up inside of this. Okay, so the bolt's in here doing this. And the piece that we just fixed, let me get the one off the other one here. And the piece that we just fixed plugs into this, and then this whole thing slides up inside of this sleeve when you got it together up inside the gun. That goes up in there, right? This entire system, all of this is going back and forth. So when this comes forward, hang on a minute, let me get it in here the right way. Well, you ought to try doing this in a field when the bullets are coming the other way, right? So this will come forward, bang. This entire thing comes to the rear. The entire barrel comes forward, and then as soon as this comes forward, this surface right here is going to trip the mechanism that allows the bolt to come back forward, this to come back, that to come up, this to come forward, that to come back, this to come up. And this is the 1900 Browning long recoil system. You know that as a Remington Model 8. You know that as or a Winchester Model 8 in an Auto 5. Any one of a number of long recoil sporting things. This was not a sporting piece. So in order to have all of this reciprocate, you're going to get 3 jolts on this thing. And the jolt that was killing the, hang on a minute, that was killing the mags, I've got to put this together back here and then slide it up. As all of this comes forward, there's a forward bump. Then you get the recoil / gas pushing on the front of this thing impulse. That goes all the way in, and all of this runs into the abutment at the back end. Bang! This all stops. Ba-boom! It all slides backwards, and this comes forward. Round ejects, fresh one comes in. So you get a forward, backward, right? A big jolt. So it hits, backward, that's recoil, bang, it runs into you, it runs forward, it goes off, it runs into you, it goes forward, it goes off, it runs in. Holy cow, this thing is busier than a 3-pecker billy goat when it's running. All of this reciprocating mass has to be lubricated. This whole deal here, we're going to pull this out just to show you what's going on. All of this sits up inside of this tube right here. So I'm going to take this out of the vise just for a second and load all of this up in here. Okay. And all this fits pretty tightly. There's not an enormous amount of clearance in here. All of this fits pretty tightly. And then this runs all the way up to there and goes into battery. And there's the ejection sleeve. The ejection port is open. So when it goes off, this moves. And as you can see here, you can see that's cooling fins going by. And then this is a gas piston. Let me hold this up here so it doesn't slide down. This is a gas piston. And as you can see right here, that moves. Now there's a flash hider that's got the front sight on it. Okay, that flash hider screws down over this. So when the charge goes off, this entire area pressurizes, and in addition to the recoil, it shoves it back. And it's kind of like a recoil augmenter on the Maxim system, where they had that whole augmentation thing plugged into the front end of it in order to allow the gas to do it. This fits like a steam engine cylinder. In fact, it looks like a labyrinth packing junk ring on a tramp steamer. Well, as you can, this thing is a little bit dirty, and I can turn it loose and it won't even fall out. I've turned it loose and it hasn't fallen out because it's pretty dirty right now. Well, to get this off, you're supposed to be able to take this off. I had to calibrate the Terwillikers out of this thing to get it apart. Calibrate, that's percussive maintenance. Ah, there it goes. So it's very dirty, but you're supposed to take this off and clean all this out. Now, when this is screwed on here and this thing is ready to go and the nearest hole is here, how in the name of Sam Hill do you lubricate that? Well, boys and girls, I'm going to tell you the way it was done back in 1918 was just to pour kerosene down the muzzle of this thing, whether it was loaded or not. That makes the modern sensibilities get a little bit wigged out. OSHA in 1918 was a small town in Wisconsin. All right, I'm back down here on a towel. There's a couple other things that I want to show you. The weak link in this gun, in this entire system, are the springs. And I would begin to tell you that maybe these springs are a little bit, I wish these springs had a little bit more rate to them. The inner spring pushes on the bolt with a fixed firing pin, and when the bolt locks shut, the firing pin appears, swoop, and off it goes. So the actual act of this rolling shut is what detonates the cartridge. This spring goes over the outside of that. That spring is pushing on the breech sleeve. So you got this going on in there while you've got this going on inside of that. Yikes, I'm not even going to try to put this in here. That's in here like this. No, that goes in there like that. That's right. So then this pushes on that, and this pushes on that. Clear as a bell, right? That whole stack of garbage has got to operate. There's no room for dirt anywhere in here. There isn't any room for dirt. This whole thing is a journal bearing. It's a sleeve bearing, and it's got to be lubricated. And I'm telling you, I have the collector grade publication book about the Chauchat, and it's Honor Bound is the name of the book. It's a fabulous book. If you're into this system, it's a fabulous book, and it's probably got every single thing in it. Collector grade publications puts it out, and that has the reprint from the 1918 American Army synopsis on this thing. The French needed a squad automatic weapon. That's what we call it now. They needed it now, and they needed a whole bunch of them. Mr. McCollum did a very good video on this and covers a lot of this history. You're going to see other history of it. I'm just dealing with it as a machine right now. I can tell you as a machine, it works great when it's clean, but not when it's hot and not when it's dirty. It does not like being hot. It does not like being dirty. Last thing I want to show you, and then I'll stop talking here and we'll put it back together again. This piece right here pushes the cartridge off of the top of the mag. Let me grab a mag here. So let me get all this out of the way. So that will strip around off the top of the mag. Meanwhile, this handle right here, I'm sorry, this is actually mounted like this. I just wanted you to see it. This track right here is actually manipulating a feed gate that's up. The cartridge comes in and then the feed gate drops out of the way. This thing goes in between it and it actuates a device up in here. Ah, that one wasn't running, right? It actuates a barrel lock right here. This piece right here gets up into the slice that's mounted in a barrel. So here's the feed ramp right here. This whole thing, there's a lot going on. And then you got this bipod, which is less than worthless, but it is what it is. So that's pretty much it. This part slides up underneath here, goes up into that tunnel and depresses this to allow the barrel to unlock. And yeah, and your billy goat's doing its thing. So let me put this thing back together again, show you something with feeding out of a mag, and I'm going to wrap this pig up. Every single screw on this thing can, does, will, has, might come loose. There are special spanners to adjust some of the screws. Some of these aren't screws. This actually has a little tit that sticks out, and where these slots are sets where this block is, which sets how high up the bullet retraction mechanism sets up in there. Yeah, you got to look from such a proud promise to where they were. Last thing here, and do a quick move over. I want to show one thing real quick. This is the bump. Here you go, back here. This is the bump everybody's talking about, this thing. If you put your face here, which it's natural to want to do, to attempt to look over these sights, this will come back and break your cheekbone. Don't do it. So if you ever see somebody shooting one of these things, you'll see their face all the way up here. And once you learn how to do it, you learn that when operating this equipment, that your sight picture is irrelevant. You better be watching where the rounds are dancing, or they're going to head over the backstop. Couple of things about this, because it's an open bolt piece of equipment, you cannot put the magazine in it with the bolt forward. It won't go up in there the right way. You have to have the mag back, or else this follower will jam it up. I've actually seen that happen to us. So a procedure we've come up with is just to ensure that that it's selected. You see this screw turner right here. That's actually the selector switch on the other side. You ensure that this is selected to safe. When two people are operating this, like they ordinarily would, you had a gentleman that was running ammo, the provider, the provocateur, or whatever he was. The provider would walk up with this mag in his hand, with the paint on this side to tell him which side. You think the two big smiley faces would be the giveaway. When we've operated this gun in the past, I have the person that's operating it put their hand right here and hang on to this bolt handle. If you're doing it by yourself, just verify that it's in safe so that the bolt probably won't release. Knowing, of course, that once you insert and you lock that up in there, if this bolt comes forward, it's going off. So it will pick a round up and it'll go off. So let's demonstrate. So this was obviously never designed to be loaded in the field. And from what I've read, they were only, I'm guessing they were only used once. Well, you can see some of these dummies I built have had the living crap beat out of them by this thing. These projectiles are actually soldered into these things. And I've lost about half of them already. So you can see when the round comes up, it actually is supposed to kick forward ever so slightly, and it will. These rounds are just beat up. They've got holes in them, but you can see where it's standing proud of this, where it's all forward. So the mag would insert. Once you're sure it's in, when you pull the trigger, it chambers around, and bang, off it goes. Okay? Now, there is no way to cycle the barrel sleeve, so if it gets hung up, there's no way to do it. All right? But if you put this thing in Cooper Coo, it comes forward. See, we've had a malfunction here because the mag, 2/3 of this gun's problems are the mags. Here we go. And this mag is down. Now, why is it down? So let's find this out. Why is that not up? And here we have the mag damage that we were talking about, because this has the unmodified bolt in it, and that mag is slag. Well, having said that, I'm going to go put the unmodified handle, or the modified handle, back in it. And I'm going to tell you that there's really only one thing left to do, isn't there? And that, boys and girls, is how I put the sex in dyslexic.